Welcome everyone. You're here with Shannon and Paula with Sage Wellness Connection, and we are looking deeper into the dimensions of wellness, and today we're talking about occupational wellness. So before we start, we will tell you a little bit more about ourselves. Do you want me to start, Shannon?
Sure, go ahead.
It always sounds a bit the same when we introduce ourselves. Both Shannon and I started out in the recreation field. We didn't know each other, but that's just how it happened. And went on to continue studies in the human services. And for myself, I explored, studied, and practiced as a holistic health practitioner in the areas of Reiki, aromatherapy, and I have a strong interest in meditation as well. Both of us completed a psychological health and safety certificate, and we're both certified executive life coaches as well, which has been very interesting and very applicable to both sides of the work that we do. We both are 200-hour yoga teachers and working on completing our 500-hour certificates. And I'm really excited to share my passion and knowledge as part of Sage Wellness Connection in conjunction with the Rural Mental Health Project.
Well, I think, Paula, you bring up some great points. Obviously, we look to our history. We kind of started out in the same way, and even without knowing each other, and just have followed very similar journeys, which of course has led us here today. But just when we do back it up, just from our very beginning roots of education was around recreation, which makes it interesting because in that piece and education and learning, we talk lots about occupational pieces and then what do you do after that occupation. So we would look to how do we transition people either from one occupation to another or into retirement, because that was a big piece of that recreational side to us. And then, of course, what have we done across our years is work in the human service industry, supporting people in a variety of capacities, whether that's in a parenting capacity, whether that's just out in the community, and how do we adjust to our community? How do we find our passion within the community? And that may include work and things like that. So I think it seems only natural that we would land here today doing our collaboration of Sage Wellness and with the Rural Mental Health Project, allowing us to broaden the scope and capacity and get this information out to people has just been a really great bonus to the work that we do.
Absolutely. And of course, we always like to acknowledge and thank the Canadian Mental Health Association and the Rural Mental Health Project for sponsoring our podcasts and webinars. And Shannon will go a little deeper and talk a bit more about the Rural Mental Health Project.
Absolutely. And we do like to highlight the Canadian Mental Health Association as well, just to say that if you have that opportunity, go look on their website. It has some great information there as well. And they're kind of the foundation to the Rural Mental Health Project. But in saying that, I think what had worked really well for us and why we can connect with the Rural Mental Health Project is because the whole basis of the project is to be community driven. And we often say it's not that we're that much different than an urban setting. There could be a lot of the same things that are offered, but we are still different. There's a reason why people live in rural settings, whether that is driven because of their work was out in this area, their family was out in this area, they grew up here, whatever it is, it has brought them here and they want to live this lifestyle, which does look different than when you're living in that urban setting. But in saying that, often the things that are available to us can look quite a bit different because of the population density alone. So we're so happy that this has become a community-driven program so we can really look to our communities and say, what do we need to support that mental health piece in everybody? And that leads me to say, you know, it needs to be a strength-based program. So that was just such an easy addition for us because we really do like to say, hey, let's look to see what we have first before we start saying we need this or we need that, we need this, because maybe we do already have it here within our communities and it's just people didn't know, because that can be one of the biggest barriers too, is just that lack of knowledge because maybe they didn't require it in their past, but now they do. So we want to make sure we get that information out. We build up the strengths that we have, and really looking though to the whole community. We're not just targeting one person or one age group or one sector. This is about saying, okay, let's look to our community. What are the things that impact our community? We know that there's obviously a very large agricultural base to our community, but we also know there's a very large military base. And then there's all of us, I don't want to say in between, but there's all of the people that do come to the table as well, that are either working or retired or still young and going to maybe elementary school. We need to make sure that we have programs that our parents can access, our kiddos can access, but our seniors can access as well. But we can't do it alone, right? So we really need to make sure that we are collaborating with everybody within the community, and sometimes outside resources too, because that's just the reality out here, is we don't have everybody necessarily sitting right here. So we got to look to ways that we're collaborating not only with the people here, and we're very fortunate to have the Impact Committee, which the whole intention and premise of the committee is to look how we can support the mental health within our communities. And we do talk about the development too. When we say developmental, that is going to be developmentally appropriate for everyone involved, that we're looking for all different ways to deliver that information, that it is consumable for people in a way that they can understand and becomes usable, so that it's not just about a whole bunch of conversation, right? It's actually things that people can understand, put in practice, for themselves, for their families, for their colleagues, whatever the case might be. And then finally, I think it's been a misconception that has led to some stigma, led to some bias, maybe even led to some judgment, that everybody has mental health. That's why we say 5 in 5 people have mental health. Everybody has mental health. Everybody has these different components that impact our mental health, that build up our mental health, but we all have it. So it's not something that some disease that you might have on the side or a diagnosis that you may have on this other side. We all have it. And the key is, how can we support that mental health so that we can be productive, but also happy, joyful community members?
Yeah, somewhere along the line, the words mental health became synonymous with mental illness, which
Yes.
isn't the case. If I'm working on my emotional health, physical health, it's the same as working on my mental health. Getting enough sleep, as we've talked about recently in one of our podcasts, our sleep hygiene, that's improving our mental health.
Absolutely. And we really have to be aware that it takes all of these components. And that is the piece of where, when we developed our wellness philosophy, is we really wanted to speak about the holistic approach to wellness and well-being, because it isn't just one factor that is going to change you or the person beside you. There is multiple factors, and we call that the 8 dimensions or domains. You'll hear us say both terms of wellness. And there are those 8 components that, I'm sure we could even make it more specific than that if we wanted to. But I think that is broken up enough for all of us to understand all the different pieces that do impact our mental health and our well-being.
Well, it's so important for us to point out, and that's why we dive deeper into each section, because even tonight, or even today, as we're talking about this one section, you'll see how it's so interconnected and so interdependent with all the other dimensions of wellness, because we're not one-dimensional people. And it's just so important to be taking that broader view, that holistic view on our wellness.
Absolutely. And the thing that we want to really get across too is that when we're out of sync in one of those areas, it is going to create this imbalance, right? We often talk about, and we use the tire as a part of the philosophy because it's this nice little circle, and tires get inflated and they get deflated. But another component that I think I was just thinking about when we use that and we reference the tire is that tire is constantly moving. That's why some of that, deflation, inflation kind of pieces to it can happen in different areas at different times, just like your wheel going down the road. So it's not stagnant ever. It's not, oh, I only have problems in my occupational or my job satisfaction. So once I fix that, I'm going to be mentally healthy forever. Well, life isn't quite that simple, and we know that. And that's why with that tire constantly moving, we're constantly having to look at all the different areas. And like you had said, Paula, how they're interconnected and how they impact each one of those areas. And we really, I think, made some good points around, how sleep can just, as we all know, if we only sleep for 3 hours and we have to get up and we're going to have a busy day, we're probably not exactly at our best. Not saying we can't do the work, but it's going to be tougher on us. And if we continued that down the road and a month later, that's how life was working out for us, it's going to play on all of those different emotions. We might overreact on something because we're just exhausted, not because we feel we needed to overreact. We just are at our cup, right? It's exploding over, and there's just nothing else that we can do.
Absolutely. And for example, if I am stressed out, I'm anxious, I'm overwhelmed, I just have too much on my plate, and it's affecting my emotional wellness. While other areas are going to naturally be out of sync. For example, my physical wellness, maybe I'm just too emotionally drained to do my walking or my exercises or eat right, make healthy meals. So that's going to become out of sync and create an imbalance. But my occupational wellness is going to be affected as well. How do you perform the way you need to when you're at work? So that's going to throw that out of balance. My intellectual wellness is most likely going to be affected. I don't want to be taking on any new projects, or even maybe I just don't even feel like I can do the hobbies that I love to do. So that's the idea of the imbalance. But we can also then, on the flip side of things, look to the wellness wheel to be able to figure out how to use those other areas then to balance it out as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. And that's our opportunity to strengthen some things. And what I like about that, when we look at the wellness wheel and we have, some nice little questions to go along with that we can determine maybe where our wheel and our imbalances are sitting. Often we're so focused on one area that maybe we're stressed over our finances, that we feel that is got to be the area that is completely out of balance. And not taking away that, there probably is some merit to that. But maybe it's actually taking a bigger chunk out of our emotional wellness or out of our social wellness piece, that we're staying disconnected because we are so stressed, or we kind of push some people away because of our emotional reactions on things. And when we don't have the people that we normally have supporting around us, it can really create that imbalance. And maybe those are the people we typically would get some advice from, but we have pushed them away.
Absolutely. So then you access that social wellness piece to help you in those other areas. You use those areas of strength, especially, we know we just did a webinar on our social wellness and talking about the importance of creating strong support systems. And we do that. So when, like for me, if it was my emotional wellness, then I can lean on that social side that I've cultivated and really worked on to then help me manage the emotional side, like you said, Shannon.
And I'm sure, like, even in that scenario, right, those people, those relationships that you have cultivated could sometimes recognize things in you that, hey, Paula, I see that you're not, seeming how you normally would be. You're not as joyful, or you're not as engaged, right? Because those are the people that would know you. And it would be a trusting enough relationship that they could say that to you without hurting your feelings. It would be out of, purely a sense of loyalty and commitment because of the relationship that you have built around that.
Yeah, and it might actually become, I guess, help you be a little bit more proactive. So if that support system's noticing things, maybe you never get to that point where you're feeling absolutely burnt out because they're catching you when you're just going, going down a little bit, and they're saying, okay, well, what do you normally do to get yourself out of this? Is it journaling? Is it reading a book? Is it going to yoga? Like, let's figure this out. And then maybe you don't get to the point where it's affecting all those other areas because you're just accessing that one other part of your life.
I think people have brought up some really great examples because January is known, where people kind of get back on the horse or they start up their routines again because they're trying to
What is it?
New Year.
Me.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And often, when we talk about, because it tends to be focused around our physical health and well-being, that people will set up all of those networks to make them accountable to maybe showing up, to not necessarily going to a gym, but just even out for a walk or whatever it is that you need that supports those kind of things. So we're just talking about exactly the same thing. Let's kind of create that network and support system that helps all year, that can maybe hold you accountable every once in a while. Like, hey, Paula, I haven't seen you out walking. That just seems strange for you because normally I see you 4 times a week. What's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is an example of our wheel when it's out of sync, out of balance. It's not rolling along the way we'd like it to roll along. And it's important to really be aware of those areas, because sometimes if you are, maybe you lead with your emotional wellness, it might present like that even in your own head. And it's really helpful to be reflective, to take a step back, to take a really good look. Maybe it's not actually my emotional wellness. Maybe it's my spiritual wellness. Maybe I haven't had time to really just be with myself or be out in nature or do whatever makes your heart sing and fills up your cup. So maybe it's really not about your emotional wellness. Maybe you need to get back. Like both Shannon and I like gardening. And that can be a spiritual grounding, healing practice. Well, maybe, the summer's almost over and you haven't done as much as you'd like. Well, now you're feeling emotional. Well, let's take a look and make something a priority that we've let go to the wayside.
Because there's just so many ways to look at it, right? Like you take the gardening example. Yeah, maybe you missed the summer, but maybe you can bring some of those plants indoors then, right? There's so many great ways that, once we open the door to the conversation of, like we said, truly finding out where are the areas that are actually being impacted, not just what we feel they might be, but really exploring what they are through some more objective questioning is a great way to find out where that imbalance is. And I think we always joke about this is probably when the car light is on, telling you either your tire is low or you need to check the engine, right? These are the moments, right, that, many of us, I'm just as guilty, have probably ignored the light a little bit longer than I should have because I'm just not prepared to take care of it right then. But then we know we're going to pay a price. So what we're suggesting is maybe when we see that light, even in our own life, that, something is going on, here's a great way to begin to explore where are we feeling out of balance. And like you're saying, Paula, it might not be what we expect. And that's okay, because often that's what drives what we're going to do in the future.
Yeah. So let's take a little bit of a deeper look at occupational wellness. So occupational wellness is about enjoying and finding meaning in your occupational endeavors. So whether it is your work or your volunteer endeavors, whatever it is that you feel is vocational for you. So feeling content and acknowledging and appreciating your contributions to the workplace is extremely important. This dimension of wellness encourages personal satisfaction and enrichment throughout your life.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, right? We're not talking about a job per se. That's not the only aspect when we talk occupational wellness, because we're talking about that developmental, that holistic view, that zero to wherever kind of thought process. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you have to have a job in order to explore these kind of things or build up this area. It could be around volunteering. It could be around something you enjoy that you just share maybe with the neighborhood. Whatever it is that works within your life and where you're at in your life. And that looks different for many people.
Yeah, you could be an accountant, but you teach painting classes on the side, and that's where you really feel passionate and you draw so much energy from those. And maybe that's what is really keeping you well in this domain. And I think this is where a lot of people think about what is my purpose in life. Someone asked us recently to talk a little bit more about purpose. And so this is maybe a domain that you might want to explore a little bit more if you're questioning some of that, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great point in saying that sometimes we do a job just basically to do a job, right? We know we need the financial aspects for it. Doesn't mean it always has to be our passion, where some people will do a job that needs to be their passion as well. So it's looking to your own character of the things that drive you and motivate you forward, and then that helps you land in the right place for it. Not everything we can do is because this is absolutely our passion of what we want to do. Sometimes we do that on the outside, like your example of the accountant that does the painting or maybe
Or
teaches
for us
yoga.
with yoga, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe in our community, it's just a smaller community. Maybe it's not feasible to be able to do that full time, or yeah, it's just not how it happens. But to have that on the side, to be able to access that and still contribute to the community and connect with people is huge.
And I think it's why we talk about the exploring piece, why that becomes so important. In exploring, we need to also explore ourselves, right? Really begin to understand ourselves, because people can say, oh, I can totally see you as a lawyer or a whatever, a teacher or whatever. And to some degree, that could be true. But maybe there's other things, right, that you just haven't had the chance to explore yet. So I think it's really important to step back and determine who you are. And also those other things that some people just want a job that they work at, that they don't want to be called upon all these things. They want to know the structure, the timeline is more important to them.
Want
They
to be
want to
able
know
to
what you've
leave
done.
work at work at the end of the day
Yes.
and make that separation, and that's okay.
Yes, and it's the difference of not everybody's an entrepreneur. That's okay. One is not better than the other. And I'm sure anyone that's been an entrepreneur has also appreciated when they go to work with somebody every once in a while that, hey, they are actually taking on some more responsibility. I don't have to take on everything. Or sometimes that's what drives them forward. I really want to take on all the pieces and all the responsibility and have a say in how it's moving forward. There's no right, there's no wrong in that. It's just really determining what works well for you, because if that high stress type of situation doesn't work for you, doesn't matter how passionate you are, you have to balance that out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this next point about don't settle, keep motivated to work towards what you want. We're not looking at that in an idealistic sense that if your job doesn't work for you, quit and find a new job. Maybe it's finding things within that job that work for you. Like you said, Shannon, maybe that structure, maybe the routine, maybe being able to leave your work at work is what works, and that keeps you healthy and balanced. So then you can go home and do whatever. Maybe you bike or run marathons. Then you can go home and you can focus a different kind of energy on those things. And that's the way that you're going to keep your occupational wellness cup full.
And we often say, because we do a lot of work in workplace wellness as well, that if you're looking for additional motivation within your work, it's okay to talk to an employer about that. Maybe you were hired for something specific, but maybe there are some other aspects in that you could take on as well, because maybe you're coming with a different experience or a different set of education, whatever it is, that then you can find more motivation at work that would drive you forward in that same setting, because maybe it gives you the structure you need, but all you're looking for is this just a little additional motivation piece, and maybe it is right there. So it's just learning to become confident to be able to ask those kind of things in your current workspace.
Because I'm thinking of if I was working at a job in a retail store, say, with clothing and groceries, and I was hired for one specific area, and I saw that maybe I would work better in another area because I could have more connection with customers coming in. Maybe it would be less physical and, less demanding on my body. Go and talk to the employer, find what fits within where you're at and try to make that work. And then in other types of jobs, often you can branch into other areas and still maintain the majority of the job that you were hired for, but then contribute in other committees or projects or whatever it may be.
And I think just, if you go back to the beginning of this webinar itself, right? If you look to what Paula and I have done, obviously we are always driven forward about trying something new, learning something new. So that's been our way of being motivated and moving towards an area of passion, right? We love obviously the wellness stuff. So we've always looked for different avenues and aspects to learn more about it, to be engaged more, whether it be the yoga. We've up that again. We started with the 200 hours because that was just a passion of things that we love to do, and then thought, oh yeah, okay, we can teach a little bit in this and connect to another community around it. And that's now driven us that, hey, we want to just develop it a little bit more. So that's why we do the 500 hour. And that's not our main career by any means, but it is certainly that something that adds to our career.
Yeah, and I think this dimension of wellness, this occupational wellness, is just goes so well with our intellectual wellness. We, can bounce the two off each other and be creative and figure out how to find the path that works for you.
Yes. And I think it'd be fair to say for both of us that we're not, I guess you could say, willing to just forego the other work that we do, right? We've been quite passionate about supporting people, in all different levels for quite some time, because that is what given us the experience to be able to draw upon when we've moved into this newer role of doing Sage Wellness webinars and podcasts and things like that, is because we have this history. It's just always been a part of what we do. We're just now finding another avenue in addition to it.
Absolutely. So looking to our discover portion, once you're in a job or a career, it's really important to be able to be content and be present and enjoy just being there, regardless of the work. And creating connections and communicating with coworkers is a huge piece of that. It doesn't mean you need to have big parties and celebrations outside of work with those coworkers or anything, but creating meaningful connections is important because work is a huge piece of our lives.
Absolutely. Like, you consider the amount of time we spend at work,
Mhm.
even with our recent 2 years of pivoting to doing lots of work at home, lots of people are there now. We're still connecting in this way and finding ways, because I think it
Yeah.
drove the point forward, right? We still need to connect. This is what we do.
And sometimes I think we connect more because
Yeah.
remotely, because we've just really evolved along with the technology.
Yes. And I think that's what shows you that we can, right? We can think beyond, that traditional setting of that's how we were. We cultivated relationships there. We knew, right? We were spending hours there. We needed to. If you're going to spend, say, even 6 hours in one location with people, it's probably a good idea to create some connection with those people. That doesn't mean they're all going to be your best friends, but you can still create good connections with people, even if they're coming from a totally different area, a totally different perspective. Often that's what drives our own intellectual side, is by experiencing something new, learning something new from people. So, and that can also create some motivation.
Well, and in the human services field, in the job, I guess our other jobs, for me, it was super important. I guess it was crucial really to have strong coworkers, because at one time the part of my job was a higher stress job, and I needed to come back and debrief with people that were in my organization, that understood the confidentiality of it, as well as understood the work. And it was so amazing to be able to come back to the office and just talk to whoever was there, because everyone was supportive of each other. And that was just, it was, maybe it was unique, I'm not sure, but it was truly important for what I was doing at the time.
And I think you bring up a great point, right? If it doesn't exist, it's something that needs to be cultivated, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not,
it definitely didn't just walk into the job
no.
and it was like that. It was something that was important, something I needed, and something that I worked to create.
Mhm. Yeah, and I do think that that becomes the key to it, that, this is a working thing, like you have to cultivate these things. It's not that every workplace is just going to have this perfect supportive environment. Everybody has to be willing to engage in it. Maybe not everybody will, but you can do your part, right?
Mhm.
We don't have control of everybody, but if you at least are doing your part, you will begin to cultivate something and find the people that you can do these, whether you need to debrief with them or you just need to talk about absolutely nothing that has to do with
Yeah,
anything.
and just have a good laugh. I think we did
Yes,
that many times as well, which is just as important,
yes,
because
I think so too.
I think that leads us into our next point about the work-life balance. Um, you and I have always talked, Shannon, about how it's not so cut and dry. Work is not work and home is not home. It really is truly that balance of your entire life, and what does that look like. Um, and the humor in the workplace and being able to laugh, for me, that was a big part of that balance that I needed. And I think also, going a little further in this subject, boundaries play a huge role when it comes to our work-life balance, and how to be able to achieve that.
That is such a good point, because often, right, if we don't create those boundaries, we're going to be disappointed in other people and we think it's on them, right? But
Yeah.
we're the ones that have to create the boundaries around our willingness, our ability to maybe be that person that can take the debriefing. But it's not to say that you can't do your part in it, but maybe there's only so much that you can take on because it might consume you. So it's
Mhm.
okay to create a boundary to say, for sure, I can have a conversation to this degree about it, but I'm not equipped to handle, this, and this. It is absolutely okay with, what it looks like, how much conversation you're going to have, even about your personal life. That's okay. I think that looks different for everybody. There's people that love to share everything. There's people that like to share just a little bit. I don't think there's a right or wrong in that either. That's respecting other people's boundaries of whatever you want to share, share. If you're not a sharer, then don't share, right? That's how we cultivate those relationships down there, is because we have that level of respect for everybody.
Exactly. And I think when we're talking about boundaries for some people, and especially depending on your background, maybe the boundaries that I grew up learning, maybe they're not what I need in my life. And I think we need to really be a bit more introspective when we're deciding on where we want our boundaries to be. We also have to be flexible, because it's not always going to work. And if we're not flexible, it gets really frustrating. But for myself, maybe I need to look at boundaries of, since I'm the person coming in that needs to debrief, maybe I need to really decide where the line is um, in the sand. I guess that's that's the analogy. Where's the line in the sand? Where do I decide that this is too much in what I'm doing in my job? And when do I need to go in to my supervisor, for example, and say, hey, I can't do this all. I need some advice. I need to talk things over with you, versus just debriefing and maybe verging on complaining with a coworker, right? Where are those boundaries? Where's that line? Um,
Mm.
and then also boundaries around um, if I have a work phone that I take with me after work, is it okay? Do I need to just shut that work phone off at night? What do I need to do to keep that separate? If that's what I need, what do I need to do with that work phone? It's really thinking about all those things. That's why we always talk about journaling, because journaling is a way to actually put it on paper, dissect it, take a look at it, decide if it jives with you and fits with your life. Shannon is really big on putting it aside and then coming back and taking a look at it after, because then it has time to process and percolate, and then you can go back and say, okay, yeah, this does work, and I want to add something else.
I think that's such a great point, because often when whether we're writing it down in a journal or we're just thinking about it and we're creating a list, sometimes we're coming at that with a different level of emotion. But when we can set it aside for a little while, we can come back and maybe see it from a different angle,
Yeah.
and that maybe it wasn't as traumatic as we felt at the time, or maybe it was, and
Yeah.
maybe we've been undervaluing what that pressure or stress or whatever has been doing to you. And that's when we talk about this balance of life. It's not about separating out what happens at work stays at work, what happens in life stays at life. Is that even possible? Like, I think we really have to step back and say, if we've had a tough go with our kiddos at home to get them to school, and it was just a crazy, chaotic morning. Everybody was grumpy because maybe it was Monday morning and they weren't ready to get back into the schedule. And then we dropped them at school. Of course, we're going to still feel that kind of crazy, chaotic feeling when we land at work. To say that we're going to open a door and walk into it and leave that behind is probably not truthful. So I always think that if we can go and maybe be truthful enough with the people we're working with, like, hey, maybe I just need 10 more minutes here. It was a little chaotic getting my kids into school today. If you could just give me 10 more minutes, I, can then take a few moments, de-stress a little bit, and then I can be more present with the work that we're about to do, as opposed to maybe coming right into whether it be a meeting or whatever the expectation might be, and you're not ready. And then maybe
then it's not working. It's not going to work anyways.
no. And then people are questioning your ability of your work, right? And I think that this is a learning on all sides, right? This is a learning on a supervisory side as much as it is to the employee side. And that's probably why we do some work in that workplace wellness piece. Is why do we expect supervisors to just know how to manage all of this? Usually we're just trying to manage tasks and things, not always trained as much in the people side of things. But I think that if we can learn a little bit more on the supervisory side of, okay, if that's something, it seems to be consistently happening, that things can be really chaotic for you and coming in the morning, why would I keep scheduling you to start like a meeting or start whatever the work is right at that, say it's 9 o'clock mark? Maybe it's we start you at 8:45 or 9:15 or 9:30. So that gives you the time to collect yourself, get your whole setting ready to go. Then you're more present. I'm getting more valuable work out of you, and you can feel better about the work you're doing. Because in my mind, nothing's worse than when you are sitting, feeling pulled from all sides and knowing you're not giving your best. I don't like to walk away at the end of the day feeling that. So I always think it's really important that we come back and have those good conversations or communications with the people that it's impacting. And once again, that's setting those boundaries and then determining, right, is this work then something you can do, right? That's sometimes we have to go back to that explore phase and determine, hey, I really thought I was going to love doing whatever. And now that I'm in it all the time, maybe this
For me.
area here isn't for me, but maybe just pivoting over here a little bit, it keeps you in it, but in an area that you can actually blossom and grow and feel good about it, and just expand all the other areas of our wellness wheel.
Yeah, those conversations are so imperative, because maybe it's not even about the work. Maybe that's how it's presenting itself, is that you're not happy with the work, but maybe you just need a little bit of flexibility, that if you're in a position where, you have to, obviously, most of us have to be cautious about, not spending much time on personal things, but maybe I just need to have my phone with me, and I know that maybe I have a child at a daycare or a child at school that might need me. They're not feeling well today or whatever it is. And if I'm constantly worrying about them, and I'm not going to be able to focus on my work. So it's being able to have some concessions, to be able to just coordinate your home life and your work life a little bit better. And then maybe that just makes all the difference. Maybe I need to combine if I have 2 coffee breaks in the day, maybe I need to combine them into one so I can run home and let my dog out, because I don't know how I'm going to be able to care for this dog properly if I can't actually go do that, and just things like that.
I think once again, I keep coming back to the pandemic, but I do think that that has really allowed us to explore what work could look like in a different setting. And
Yeah,
I think that's what becomes so exciting, that we have had been very industrial, revolutionary like settings, right, for so long
punch in and
about
punch
8 to
out.
4. Yes, that maybe there's a lot of work that doesn't have to be that way. And I'm not taking away from the people that love that. We have lots of shift work that, yeah, we got to know that somebody's going to show up at 3, not somewhere between 3 and 4. I get that for sure. So I'm not suggesting we just blow apart everything and, people show up when they show up. But certainly I think there can be some exploration around taking away maybe those traditional parameters around things and saying, okay, whether you have kids or maybe you're supporting a senior at home,
Yeah.
whatever the case might be, or even your example of a dog. I know people don't want to say, well, you shouldn't be stressed over that, but people are. They
Oh,
bring them in as
absolutely.
family members. So, that's making a judgment on somebody as opposed to saying, okay, for sure, if your dog is as important to you as mine or my child or whatever, that's okay. So what can we do, right, that allows you in that day to get the work done? Because and another person brought up to me another thing that I thought was interesting is maybe there's some people that can go really hard, get a whole bunch of work done, but then need an hour break.
Mhm.
Where there's the other personality that likes to do it kind of methodically over time in maybe 15-minute chunks. So maybe for them, that same work takes 4 hours as opposed to 2 hours. So this way we allow more people in industry that maybe traditionally would have got pushed out because they're not fitting within that exact little tight parameter, but we're still getting the same quality and level of work. And I think that's an important conversation as well, that
Yeah.
how can we blow apart the system to really look to bringing other people and engaging other people because they never thought they could in the past.
Yeah, and I think we just have to keep the lines of communication open. We have to gather our courage, call on our courage to be able to have these conversations, think outside the box, and explore what is possible. I think that's super important to be able to do. And then I guess getting back to your own personal occupational wellness. Again, we like writing things down because it's just so tangible and just so much easier to look at. Writing down your goals, exploring what do you want. And I think obviously we like to learn, and I think that it's important to note that it's never too late. I think of my own mother, who in her 70s was learning clogging and line dancing. She'd never danced as a child or teenager or young adult. She decided that's what she wanted to do. Ukulele lessons, you name it. She tried it. And so I think that the sky's the limit when it comes to really looking at what is out there for you.
And isn't the exploration part of the journey,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. I think that's the exciting part.
Mhm. Yes, for
So, and I
sure.
mean, maybe you're not going to be a professional clogging dancer. Maybe that wasn't the right example for occupational goals, but maybe that's the piece that's going to balance out um, and complete your occupational wellness. Maybe that's going to allow you to be in a job that you need. We all, whether we like it or not, we have to go to work and make money to be able to live and survive. So maybe some of those things, maybe you look at that a little differently, because maybe those other pieces of your life are going to be what supports your occupational wellness.
And I think it is really just opening your mind. But, even going back to the clogging. So like your mom, so she started it, whatever, in her 60s or 70s or whatever. Who's to say that she doesn't take that skill set and starts teaching others, right? So it
Actually, that's
gives
very
her
true.
value.
Yeah.
Yes, right. And then that gives you value and purpose. And that's kind of the underlying piece of the occupational wellness, is that value and purpose. And like you said earlier, Paula, that we begin to question, what is our purpose of being here? Why are we here? Like sometimes we get into these very, unending questions that just sometimes it's in those simple things that you just take something you always wanted to try. You learned how to do it well enough. And now you can pass it on to other people, whether you do it for free, whether people give you a little bit of money to do it. Why not?
Well, and I guess if we're thinking about vocation, and we talked a little bit about volunteering again, and I'll use my mom because there's so many examples that I could use with her, but she loved reading, and she'd always go to the library. And one day she was at the library, and someone who saw her come in often asked her if she would be interested in working with someone on English as a second language. She did. She got so much joy out of that. So, that is definitely what we're talking about with occupational wellness.
We never want to miss mentioning reading to the cats too.
Oh, yes, and reading to the cats at the at the shelter.
But it really gave her purpose too. And we see that with our younger kiddos. What a great way. There's nothing worse, with young kiddos when they're always expected to learn things. Sometimes that gets pretty old and it can be a pretty big fight. But obviously, we know it's an important skill everybody needs to have in order to have a good occupation down the road. But what a great way where our kids can go read to animals in a very similar way. There's no judgment coming from the animals. They just need that presence and that voice.
Well, and that was all piece of it, because she volunteered at the animal shelter, of course, cleaning cages, grooming animals. And then there was a program at one time where kids were coming in that needed support with their reading. And so then she joined that program to be able to support the kids, but loved it so much and continued reading on her own as well to the cats, because cats, if you have a cat, you should try it. They respond very well to reading.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, if you have a child who is struggling with reading, it's probably something that is well worth your while in checking out. And I guess before we move on, we should mention, of course, talk to a life coach. These are perfect questions and things to ponder with a life coach.
Yeah, it's just going to kind of put that information together for you. Like, it's great. Yes, you can start with journaling, you can start writing things down, but often we get a little bit our own judgments and bias in the way of, oh, I can never do that. Everybody's always said I'm too this for that, or not strong enough for this. This is an objective person, right? That can kind of look on the outside of those pieces without the judgment, right? And then challenge the opinions from there. And once again, also taking all those other pieces in account. So we're not just getting hyper focused on just maybe the occupational piece where, we're not considering that. How does, like you brought up earlier, how does it impact you emotionally? How does it impact you socially? How does it impact you financially, right? There's so many other questions that can be explored through this, and you will discover many things.
Well, and we do often get hyper focused when it's about yourself. You do, because everything is involved, all the pieces. So,
and I think when we talk about those connection points, as we were saying earlier, we spend quite a bit of our lives at work or a work-like situation. So why not find some pieces of happiness or joy that it brings you? We're not that idealistic to know that not every day you're coming out of work joyful and thinking I've made such gains or had such impact on people. Some days we know it just things need to get done. That's what the day is. But it's okay as well that even in those small things that we do, is to acknowledge that in ourselves. We got that done, right? We had a list of 10 things and we were able to get 7 solidly done. That's pretty good, right? Or if we got all 10 done, great. We are human beings that like to be rewarded and acknowledged. And just by doing those small little things for yourself does help relieve your brain to know, yeah, you're right. I actually did get some things done. It didn't feel like it, but I actually was able to accomplish things. And maybe that brings you over to that piece of, as we were talking about earlier as well, of being able to have time to connect with the people there. And that maybe is what brings you that happiness or brings you time for a little bit of laughter in that, because then you can actually emotionally feel that as well.
I think another important point is if you have the luxury of having vacation time and sick time, maybe some random personal days, like we have wellness days, take the vacation when you have the opportunity, even if it's a staycation. We all need the break. And if you're sick, take the day, because it's not helping anyone, especially yourself, to come into work, try to be present when you're really not feeling well. I think
When
that's
we
so
talk about
important.
balance, right, all the
Mhm.
time, that's the piece of balance is for sure. There are days that we do have to push through and get something done because it has to be either delivered or whatever the case might be. But it is as important to take care of yourself to be able to continue down that path. And, I've said this to my own employees that a benefit is not a benefit if you don't use it as a benefit,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So,
Yeah, it's
you
true.
know,
Even
yes,
like get using your benefits and getting the massage if you need the massage, going to your physiotherapist or chiropractor, whatever, your psychologist, whatever works for you, access those benefits. That's
yes.
what they're there for.
And they're saying that benefits themselves are becoming one of those top things to entice people to come work at places. So
Mm.
really do look into that. I know when I was younger, I think I thought that was just stupid. Why would that be some draw to come to a place? Who cares about it? But I think that as I've, obviously gotten older, I explored that a little bit more and really did be able to feel the benefit of being able to go for a massage or whatever it was that is included in that is if you don't take it, you never know. And you never
Oh,
know,
yeah.
right? So I just think those are kind of the important things that you have to look at. But overall, when we talk about it, we started with this about the interconnected piece of this. We can't just talk about your job or just talk about your occupation, right? Because all of these aspects, it is interconnected. And that's what we wanted to show you today is that your emotional health or your financial health or even your physical health uh, will be impacted by what you do in this realm.
Yeah.
So what can we do? Like Paula, I think you had a great example earlier that if you're in a big supermarket type situation and you feel you could do more in a different area, or this area is too physical because you're pushing boxes and stuff like that all the time, but maybe there's still a great way for you to be there. It's learning to have that confidence, to have that conversation, to say, I think I could be of great value over here doing this job.
Yeah.
Or, right, there's the option of saying, you know what this job has told me? I need to do maybe a little bit more and take more time and give myself more time to work on that physical wellness piece, right? Right down to not just going out and exercising and keeping yourself accountable to that. We're talking your nutritional piece, right? Whatever that can look like for you, learning
And the
more about
sleep, of course.
and the sleep, yes. Ultimately, I think we made the point about we've all probably experienced it at some point where we've not slept enough, had to go to work, and what that can feel like by the end of the week. So how
Absolutely.
can we create a schedule and a balance that works so that you can really enjoy what you're doing throughout the week, but feel good about it by the end of that week?
Absolutely. And I love the word harmony. That's just, I don't know why I like that word, but I do. And I really see this wellness wheel and all the pieces of our life when we really look at it, and we're working on different areas that need to be worked on, and maybe using those areas of strength to compensate if there's something happening in another area. And it really brings about harmony and creates a feeling of overall well-being in our lives.
Well, and I think, well, kind of my picture around that is if you've ever had a chance to go watch an orchestra play, they do a warm up at the beginning, and you think, holy, if that's what it sounds like, you hear the squeaking and banging and all of these bizarre noises coming out, and thinking, wow, these are professionals. But when they put it all together and they actually begin playing in that harmony way, to me, that is the essence of what beauty can be created when we create the harmony.
Yes, absolutely. So that brings us to our connecting with our community resources and building our community capacity. Um, so on our website, sagewellnessconnection.com, we have been developing a mental health and well-being resource hub. And Shannon, you have it set up on the website where they can just click on the specific domain, right? And it takes you to where you want to go.
Absolutely. Wherever you're thinking you're feeling, like we said about the physical wellness or emotional wellness, but that doesn't mean you're just obligated and that's the only skill set that that person is. Quite often, who's under that domain also has multiple skills,
Yeah.
abilities, or they can connect you in the right direction. So we've talked about everything from life coaches, which is like Paula and I, is something that we do as well. But we also talk about clinicians that are on there too. But then there's some, just our community, I want to say just, we shouldn't put it that way, but our community members that do some great things and are available to you, resources that are available that don't always cost money either. So that's not the intention of this, is a place that you go and then you find out, well, I can't afford that, or I have no ability to get there to do that. These are just resources that, either your benefits may be able to help you pay for, or they're free to you, but we just want you to begin to explore and discover what's within your community. And if there are resources that are kind of outside of that, that they're still accessible to you in some way. So yes, that's kind of the intention around that, is we want to build that up. And that to me is been one of the things out of the Rural Mental Health Project that we're so excited about, because it becomes sustainable as we get more resources. They'll be on there, but it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You don't have to wait for somebody to pick up the phone. You can just go explore through the website, find these different resources.
And our podcasts as well are connected to the website, and we've done those through the Rural Mental Health Project. And we've also done quite a few of them with some of our community partners. So definitely taking a little bit of a deeper dive with some of those people. And that's been really cool and exciting. So take a listen to those as well.
Yes, we've talked quite a bit about how much fun it's been bringing different people on our podcast, and even some have been included in the webinars, and just getting their impression of things and their input and insight. So it has been very exciting. So please do have a look at them, listen to pieces, draw pieces that really work for you, or send them on to somebody that you know that also could learn from it.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us tonight, and we will be continuing on with these webinars.
Yes, thank you.